And McGregor, of course, Steve, returned to the UFC scene at the weekend, beating the Cowboy in 40 seconds. And almost instantly, before they'd left the octagon, Floyd Mayweather had posted a poster on his Instagram account to his 23 million followers saying Mayweather McGregor 2 2020 with all the promotional outlets.
Yeah, very professional looking.
Look, I know that we've got to hold our hands up. We covered the fight against
loved it.
Floyd Mayweather in 2017 in Las Vegas. But for me, that was a one-off. And part of the interest for me, as I said on last week's podcast, was around the journalistic element to it, the interest in terms of how on earth a fight like that could be sold in the modern age through social media, through the conventional media, if you like, as well. But I've got absolute zero interest in a fight between Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao. What weight's it going to be made at? He weighed 170 pounds at the weekend.
So
officially,
that's
light heavyweight.
Yeah,
officially, that's light heavyweight.
But so, Mike, let me ask you this, Mike. Okay, I'll take on board what you're saying. You know I do. I'm being mildly facetious. Okay, let me ask you this. Do you think there's any chance that any of the governing bodies, the four, I'm only going to go for the four, WBA, WBC, IBF, WBO. Do you think any of them would not bend over backwards to try and get Conor McGregor into a world title fight or an interim title fight? You want to see where he's going to go. Do you think there's any chance any of those guys would say no if the Dub showed any interest?
You've just mentioned, Steve, about that great occasion between Zarate and Zamora and how the match was made at a pound beyond the bantamweight limit so that neither of them would have to relinquish their world championship belts. Moves have been made like that all the time. You've got Vasyl Lomachenko in the lightweight division now has suddenly been made a franchise champion. Are you telling me that they can't find a way to somehow give some kind of credence, some kind of credibility to a fight like that? They will find a way if necessary. But you know what? It doesn't need the governing bodies attached to it. If Conor McGregor fights...
But he wants a belt, Mike. You can tell he's an old-fashioned boxing fan. You know he's a boxing fan. That's not rubbish. He wants a belt. He wants one of those... He wants one of the 4 boxing belts on his mantelpiece. It's as simple as that. So
we could do some homework in the next few weeks, talk to all of the governing bodies. But I think in the end, they would find room for this fight.
Absolutely. I'm glad you agree with it.
That's an insult to boxers who've made their way all the way up the ranks across the years.
But at the same time, a bit of devil's advocacy, Conor McGregor has been a great athlete. I know he's been involved in some skirmishes, Mike, and there's 1 or 2 allegations fairly unsavoury floating out there at the moment. We'll left them unsaid. But there was a time when this kid had nothing, Mike, when it looked like his mixed martial arts career was going nowhere. Before he developed everything, before he got fully tattooed, before he brought the beard on, before he brought everything on, before he got the look and the swagger and the fur coat, before he started making the inroads, when he was still involved with some nefarious characters in Dublin. All of that stuff is fine. None of that's going to be legal. But there was a time when he was skint, Mike, when he was on the rock and roll, when he was dependent on his partner pulling in a few quid from her job to support him, to feed him, to get him the dietary supplements that he needed, the nourishment that he needed so that he could compete and train. He's a great story, Mike, whether we like it or not. So I've always got a bit of respect for him. I know you went over and fell in love with all them over there. I know all that, but I've got this great respect for him. And do I want to see him walk straight into a world title fight? No, I don't want to see him walk straight into a world title fight. But can I see it happening? Yes, I can, Mike.
I don't have an issue with him coming into the game, Steve. I don't even have an issue with him facing somebody like Manny Pacquiao or even Floyd Mayweather, but not with one of the recognised world championship belts attached to it. I completely understand how he will bring a level of attention to boxing that maybe no other fight, and I'm including all those great heavyweight fights out there, could bring this year, because it would embrace a completely different audience. I understand all that and how there could be many a positive in it for boxing, but you have to defend the credibility of those world championship belts. But I'm sure this is an issue we're going to be talking about.
You've heard the kind of sums this kid is generating, or this man is generating. All those champions, Crawford, whoever it wants to be, they'll all want a touch of that.
And that would then have an impact on what they do beyond the McGregor fight. Again, I completely understand that, Steve. And it goes back to that old line from Don King that you trot out time and time again, that, you get what you negotiate, not what you necessarily deserve. But he was talking there specifically about Manny Pacquiao, and that's because he thinks that Manny Pacquiao,
who is a world champion at the moment, this is the key.
Not necessarily at the best of his abilities, not necessarily the strongest of the welterweights. That's why he's talking about him. And there was just something that just didn't sit well with me, Steve, when Ariel Helwani mentioned to him that he would have to work his way through to a world championship belt. The first response was laughter. I don't like that. Because that is disrespect for those men who've tried hard, and some have lost their lives trying to get a world title. So that's the response that I didn't like.
But then he said not necessarily. I.e., I won't have to. And I think we're both being naive if we think that there would be any chance he'd have to have an eliminator. The best he'll do is some unfinished business, and he mentioned there with our great friend Paulie Malignaggi. That would set him up for that. Or he can go straight into a man. Matt, listen, Floyd put that leaflet you showed there, that Instagram leaflet, which obviously goes out to his 20+ million followers. Manny Pacquiao tweeted in cap letters, notorious Conor's nickname, with an exclamation mark, within seconds of the 40-second fight against the Cowboy finishing. Manny's in the swindle here, Mike, and he's got a belt. He's got a belt.
I completely understand all of those issues around it, Steve, but just not with a recognised world championship belt attached. Let the fight happen and let the attention on boxing come its way.
So make it at 10-8.
Let the sport drown in the attention. That's fair enough, but just not for one of the recognised belts.
Can I throw a question at you, Mike? Would he beat KSI? Would Conor McGregor beat KSI or Logan Paul?
But aren't they a lot heavier?
We're already dealing in fantasy lunacy. He's already 2 stone heavier than Manny Pacquiao, and we're discussing it like it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, he'd deal with those two.
Yeah, he would, wouldn't he?
He'd deal with those without any danger.
Now I'll throw one at you, okay? And I don't not mean to catch you out. Would he beat the current British super middleweight champion, Lerone Richards?
No. And I'll tell you why, because after the Floyd Mayweather fight at the press conference, something he mentioned that's really stuck with me, and we actually played it out in our reflections of the year in 2017. It was his comment that struck me as one of the most notable of the year. In the press conference afterwards, while he was swigging his own brand of whiskey, he said that he sat down after 5 rounds. He was talking about sparring now rather than the fight itself against Mayweather. He sat down after 5 rounds and thought 12 rounds is a long way away. And against Lerone Richards, he'd have to go 12 long, hard rounds.
Being hit by...
And he wouldn't win.
No, he wouldn't win. I'm pleased you agree on that. Lerone Richards. I tell you what, Conor McGregor and Lerone Richards being discussed under the same roof. That's what we do, folks. That's what we do.